Welcome to Global's Zuma Nigeria News. The news says Japan's ministers quit amidst PM's trust battle. Myanmar in worsening humanitarian crisis. GOP approves Biden inquiry without evidence. West Bank casualties rise as Israeli forces extend attacks. And Thai lawmakers sentenced 6 years for monarchy insults. Fumio Kishida, Japanese Prime Minister, is overhauling his government as a key corruption scandal in the ruling party that has forced the resignations of many ministers, including close ally and government spokesperson Rikazu Matsuno. On Thursday, Matsuno, whose official title is Chief Cabinet Secretary, announced his resignation after Economy and Industry Minister Yasutoshi Nishimuro also quit. According to report, Internal Affairs Minister Junichi Suzuki and Agriculture Minister Ichiro Miyashita were also stepping down, and the 5 deputy ministers would let go. The ministers all came from the so-called Abe faction, which is named after the assassinated former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, and is the biggest and most powerful faction in the rural Liberal Democratic Party. Japanese prosecutors have started a criminal investigation into the faction over the allegations of receiving about 500 million yen in the fundraising proceeds missing from party accounts, news outlets reported. In light of the various allegations made regarding political funds which have shaken the political trust in politics, the various allegations made regarding my own political funds, I have submitted my resignation, Matsuno said in a press conference. He will be replaced by Yoshimasa Hayashi, who was the foreign minister until September. Late on Wednesday, Kishida announced that he would revamp his government as he fights to control the fallout from the scandal in the party, which has led Japan almost uninterrupted since the end of World War II. He said he regretted that the scandal had worsened political distrust and insisted he would take urgent steps to tackle it. Investigators are anticipated to begin searching lawmakers' offices for evidence as early as next year, according to reports, and to examine whether other LDP factions, including one led by Kishida until last week, are involved, according to reports. Nishimuro was quoted as saying on Thursday, "The public doubts are around me over political funds, which is leading to distrust in the government as an investigation is going on, and I thought I wanted to set things right." The Prime Minister, who was already reshuffled his cabinet twice, does not need to hold an election until October 25, 2025, and the fraction and weak opposition has historically struggled to make sustained inroads against the LDP. On Wednesday, opposition groups led by the Constitutional Democratic Party of Japan led an unsuccessful core confidence motion against Kishida. An ethnic group organization operating in Myanmar northern Shan state, the Myanmar National Democratic Alliance Party, was massing forces near the village on the Chinese border, showing that fighting was imminent. The group, together with allies, the Tangan National Liberation Army and the Arakan Army, launched Operation 1027, a joint offensive on military outposts in northern Shan state. Sai Lam's family were forced to flee at dawn on October 27th, they returned 10 days after the group had declared control over Monko and the surrounding villages. Although the situation around Monko has calmed, the military has persistently raided other areas where it has lost ground, including the nearby town of Nabkham, which has bombed on December 1st and again a week later. Since the start of Operation 1027, Myanmar has seen the most significant escalation in hostilities across the country since the coup, which sparked a widespread armed uprising. Resistance forces have in recent weeks managed to overtake hundreds of military outposts, including strategic border crossing with China and India. They also close in Loikau and Korani state capital, as long as Loikau, an enclave notorious for transnational human trafficking and online scams. Analysts now say that the military is set at its weakest since the coup, with some even suggesting its imminent collapse. But alongside resistance again, there has been a serious humanitarian cost. From October 26 to December 8, more than 578,000 people were newly displaced, on top of nearly 2 million who were already displaced before the surge in fighting, according to United Nations, which says 363 civilians have been killed and 461 injured since last October. At a time when UN agencies and international non-governmental organizations have struggled to reach affected populations, it is community-based organizations, charity groups, and local volunteers who are taking life-threatening risks to help civilians. The United States House of Representatives has voted to unveil an official impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden, despite an ongoing probe finding no evidence of wrongdoing by the Democrats. On Wednesday, the Republican-controlled House voted 221 to 212 to approve the investigation, which is examining whether Biden improperly benefited from his 53-year-old son Hunter Biden's foreign business dealings. The vote came hours after the younger Biden refused to call to testify behind closed doors, and 3 months after Republicans formally began the probe. Speaker Mike Johnson and his team said in a statement after the vote, "We do not take this responsibility lightly, and we will not prejudge the investigation's outcome, but the evidentiary record is impossible to ignore." Authorizing the inquiry ensures the impeachment investigation extends well into 2024, while Biden will be running for re-election and seems likely to be squaring off against former President Donald Trump, who was twice impeached during his term in the White House, including for inciting the January 21 assault on the Capitol. Trump, who also faces 4 criminal trials, has pushed his allies in Congress to move swiftly on impeaching Biden, part of his broader calls for retribution against his political enemies. The White House has dismissed the initiative as substantiated by the facts and politically motivated. Biden swiftly condemned the vote. Biden said in a statement following the vote that instead of doing their job on the urgent work that needs to be done, the Republicans are choosing to waste time on their baseless political stunt that even Republicans in progress admit is not supported by facts. The decision to hold a vote came as Johnson and his team faced growing pressure to show progress in their investigation, which has raised ethical questions but uncovered no evidence that Biden acted corruptly or accepted bribes, either in his current role or when he was vice president between 2009 and 2017. Congressional investigations have obtained nearly 40,000 pages of subpoenaed bank records and dozens of hours of testimony from the key witnesses, including several high-ranking Justice Department officials presently investigating the president's son, Hunter Biden, on firearms and tax charges. Their attempts will almost certainly fail to remove Biden from office. Even if the House backs impeachment, the Senate would then have to vote to convict him on the charges by a 2/3 vote, a near impossibility in a chamber where Biden's fellow Democrats hold a 51-49 majority. Jamie Raskin, a Democrat, said in a statement after the vote that by endorsing this impeachment inquiry, the Republican Congress is signing up for another year for a do-nothing Congress, no substantive legislation or policy progress, all political fantasy and conspiracy theory. Attacks by the Israeli military in the occupied West Bank city of Jenin have resulted in a surging number of casualties since they began on Tuesday and have now entered the 3rd day. In the Jenin refugee camp alone, 8 Palestinians have been killed since Tuesday. The Palestinian Health Ministry said in a statement Israeli forces have killed 58 people, including children, in Jenin alone since October 7th. More Israeli forces were heading toward the city and the camp in what the military 15 incursion into the area since October 7th. Kamal Abu Arab, Guinea's acting governor, said. Abu Arab said, according to reports, that all roads leading to the camp have been damaged by military bulldozers and that its hospitals are being surrounded with soldiers blocking ambulances from evacuating the sick and wounded. Israeli forces detained around 500 people and have released 400 of them. With the camp under siege, those freed were unable to return and were sheltering in an area near Jenin, he said. The Palestinian Red Christian Society said dozens of civilians suffer from a severe shortage of infant formula and bread as Israel soldiers are deployed on the roofs of their homes, preventing them from leaving. At least 283 West Bank Palestinians, including 64 children, have been killed by Israeli fire and more than 4,000 detained since the war started, according to Palestinian officials. On Wednesday, according to the advocacy group Thai Lawyers for Human Rights, a progressive said Thai lawyer was sentenced to 6 years in prison on charges of insulting monarchy and other related offenses over 2 social media posts. Ruchanuk Srinok, 29, a lawmaker with the opposition Move Forward Party, was found guilty of lèse-majesty and breaching the Computer Crime Act by Thailand Criminal Court for 2 posts made on social media platform X in 2020. Thailand has some of the world's stringent lèse-majesty laws, and criticizing the king, queen, or their heir apparent can lead to maximum 15-year prison sentence for each offense, which makes even talking about the royal family fraught with risks. Sentences for those convicted under Article 112 of Thailand Criminal Code can be decades long, and hundreds of people have been prosecuted in recent years. One post including criticism of the government COVID-19 vaccine procurement, which included a pharmaceutical company connected to the king, TLHR said. Another was a retweet of a photo from a 2020 protest that contained messages deemed by the courts to be anti-monarchy, said the TLHR, which is monitoring her case. Chanuk, also known as Ice, was granted bail while she appeals the sentence. According to TLHR, after leaving court, she posted a message on her Facebook page saying she was back at work in Parliament and that she would like to be the voice for all 112 defendants to be granted bail. Before entering politics in 2023, Ruchanuk rose to prominence as an activist and outspoken critic of the former governor of Peru, Chan Ocha, an ex-general who seized power in a coup in 2014. Her party Move Forward won the most votes in Thailand May election, but was prevented from forming a government by the country's powerful conservative establishment over the party's bid to reform the lèse-majesty laws. Young people have been leading widespread calls for deep changes to how Thailand is run in recent years. Youth-led protests erupted across Thailand in 2020, demanding constitutional and democratic reforms that included reducing the military power and influence in politics and reforms to the powerful monarchy. Once a taboo subject, the issue of royal reform and amendment to lèse-majesty has seen a turning point since those protests, with people increasingly speaking about the monarchy openly and publicly despite legal risks. Israel has cancelled a planned trip to Qatar by the head of its foreign intelligence service to resume talks on a possible second hostage release deal, a source familiar with the negotiation states, according to reports. Mossad Director David Barnio will not travel to Qatari capital Doha, where earlier talks on the release of hostages held by Hamas militants in the Gaza have taken place, the source said. According to reports from Israel on Wednesday, the Israeli War Cabinet led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had called off the trip, and that senior Israeli officials would not go to Qatar to restart negotiations. About 240 people, from infants to octogenarians, were taken hostage during Hamas' attack on Israel on October 7th. Dozens have been freed, by many more remain missing, alleged to be held by the Palestinian militant organization and other groups in Gaza following the breakdown of a temporary truce last month. The Israeli Prime Minister office believes 135 hostages remain in Gaza, 116 of whom are alive. Official discussions have not resumed since hostage talks that had been taking place in Doha broke down earlier this month. But Israel, the United States, and Qatar have continued to discuss ways to try to jump-start the discussions. Multiple sources said, "We have never stopped," one source familiar with the talks said. Families of some of the Israeli hostages were outraged by the decision to cancel the Barnett trip and demanded answers. "We are fed up with the indifference and deadlock," they said in a statement. The families were shocked by the report on the rejection of the director of Mossad's request to formulate an argument for the release of the hostages, the statement added. This announcement comes in addition to the ignoring of the parents' request to meet with the Prime Minister and the Defense Minister, which has not yet been answered. Barnier has been leading the hostage negotiations for Israel, while his American counterpart, CIA Director Bill Burns, has done the same for the U.S. On Thursday, an Australian mother who spent 2 decades in prison after she was wrongly found guilty of killing her 4 children had her convictions formally quashed as her lawyers called for legal reform and substantial compensation. Kathleen Fogbeek was pardoned and freed in June on the recommendation of retired Judge Tom Batters, who re-examined all the evidence put on her 2003 trial and found reasonable doubt as to her guilt. But clearing her name needed an official ruling by the New South Wales Court of Criminal Appeal, and on Thursday a panel of judges agreed she should be acquitted of all charges, including one of the country's most prominent miscarriages of justice. An emotional Fogbeek thanks supporters who worked tirelessly to convince the NSW government and legal system that now scientific evidence warranted closer scrutiny of her convictions. She was jailed in 2003 on 3 counts of murder and 1 of the manslaughter following the death of her 4 babies over a decade from 1989. No physical proof was submitted that she had killed them, but the jury was convinced that the chances of all 4 dying from natural causes was so unlikely that it must have been murdered. Certain passages in her diary were also interpreted as admissions of guilt. As recently as 2019, an inquiry into her convictions found there was no reasonable doubt that she had committed the crimes, but another injury began in 2022 after scientists discovered a previously unknown mutant gene in her 2 daughters that could have been fatal. The evidence provided a genetic explanation of her children's death, which created reasonable doubt about her convictions and enough to convince a judge to recommend her pardon. The issue of faulty voters' cards is disturbing voters and election observers alike, with just a few days to go before the presidential election in the Democratic Republic of Congo, at a time where the DRC is already weakened by attacks from the M23 rebellion and other armed forces. The issue risks adding a fresh layer to the specter of a post-election chaos. According to the United Nations, as Congo gets ready to hold elections on December 20th, a record 6.9 million people are displaced across the vast Central African nation. In the east, fighting between the military and the 23 rebels has displaced hundreds of thousands of people in recent months, exacerbated a humanitarian crisis. While many of those displaced do not even have voters' cards, the cards' poor quality is another concern. Printed with terminal ink, they are quickly becoming illegible. As far as political parties are concerned, the faulty voter cards are already stalking with candidates to use strong words to undermine the credibility of this election. However, observers are also worried about the outcome of this election. Political analyst Alfred Wamona Brave said the voters are also hesitant to be sure about the credibility of the election, arguing that the Independent National Electoral Commission was facing a number of changes in addition to the potential faulty ID cards. The election also faces enormous logistical obstacles. Last week, the Electoral Commission told the president that it urgently needed 4 Antonov aircraft and 10 helicopters to transport electoral materials to all localities. While some observers doubt the election can be held properly, the Commission maintains that the timetable will be respected for Congo's nearly 44 million registered voters to cast ballots. Voters will be casting ballots for national and provincial legislative and municipal councillors as well as for the presidency. It will be Zoom on Nigeria after this short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. And in Nigeria, Rivers State demolishes assembly complex. The crisis in Rivers State assumed another dimension early on Wednesday when the state government demolished the state legislative chamber. The assembly complex, comprising about 6 buildings, including the main chamber, was built during the administration of Dr. Peter Odili. Justifying the demolition, the State Commissioner for Information and Communications, Joseph Johnson, in a statement on Wednesday, said the place was unsafe for human habitation because of the recent explosion and fire incident there. The demolition of the chamber came as the 4 lawmakers loyal to the state governor, Siminalayi Fubara, led by factional Speaker Edison Eki, held a plenary at the Government House, Port Harcourt, while the demolition was ongoing. On Monday, 27 members of the House elected on the People's Democratic Party platform defected to the All Progressive Congress and threatened to reject any request by the governor for approval. The lawmakers, in their individual letters written to the factional Speaker, Martin Amawole, and read on the floor of the House on Monday, stated that they defected because of the division in the party over the tussle for the position of the National Secretary. The crisis took another turn on Wednesday as the State Assembly complex was demolished amid tight security before the governor proceeded to present the state 2024 budget to the elect legislators. During the demolition, which started at 7 a.m. and ended at 5 p.m., human and vehicular movements were restricted from both ends of Moscow Road leading into the assembly, as heavily armed policemen and other personnel mounted were seen at different locations. The governor said to be at the assembly in the morning when the demolition started before going back to the government house, where the budget presentation to the elect faction started 9 a.m. Fubara, while reading the budget estimate of 800 billion naira, said the bill was creating budget of renewed hope, consolidation, and continuity. A breakdown of the budget showed that 410 billion was allocated to capital expenditure, representing 51%, while over 361 billion naira was allocated to recurrent expenditure, representing 49% of the budget. Fubara said the 2024 budget proposal was anchored on the assumptions of the crude oil price benchmark being $7 per barrel at 1.5 million barrels per day production, with an exchange rate of 750 naira to the dollar. According to him, the budget will be funded for internally generated revenue, Federation account allocation, committee receipts, 13% oil derivation fund, value-added tax, excess crude, and grants from development agencies. The Federal Executive Council on Wednesday approved the removal of universities and other tertiary institutions in the country from the Integrated Personnel and Payroll Information System, allowing the schools to deal with the salary issues of their staff internally. The Minister of Education, Professor Mahmoud Tahir, disclosed this at the end of a council meeting presided over by the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu at the Presidential Villa at Abuja, noting that the payment system had eroded the institution's autonomy. He said the council relieved management of tertiary institutions of the burden obtaining approval and waiver from the Office of the Head of Service for Recruitment, noting that they are now free to do with their recruitment internally. He said fact to the decision to remove the institutions from the system because of its concern for efficiency and the management of the institutions. According to him, apart from the opposition of the payment system by the Academic Staff Union of Universities, the IP's issue had proved time-consuming for university vice-chancellors, dragging the efficiency of the management of the institutions. He stressed that ASU will be happy over the fake decision since they have been agitating for it. The minister explained that as the tertiary institutions are governed by laws, they should be allowed to exercise their autonomy. Expatiating on the issue, the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mahmoud Idris, explained that IP's exemption is a big relief to the institutions. ASU had in 2020 gone on strike for about 8 months in protest against the implementation of IPs. And that's all on the global news. Thanks for watching. I am Alheri Moses.